When I was a uni student, I was really into everything paranormal. I wanted to experience something spiritual, like see a ghost. I went to supposed haunted places, played around with trying to communicate with them, basically anything to try to get in touch with spirits or ghosts. This didn't make me very popular amongst my peers, and most of them avoided me. There was just one friend, let's call him Atsushi, who didn't. Atsushi still talked to me and sometimes even gave me tips on how I might become psychic. He came with me to haunted places too. Apparently, he could see ghosts ever since he was little, so I used to listen to his stories with a twinkle in my eye. Well, as the saying goes, even a poor marksman will hit the target with enough shots. I don't know which of my actions opened up to this, but what I'd been hoping and praying would happen to me finally did. I finally experienced something spiritual. I didn't see a ghost though. Let me tell you what happened. I was walking around some haunted spot when someone suddenly grabbed my ankles, making me fall over. It really startled me, but seeing Atsushi was with me too, I got really excited. I said, "Hey, something just grabbed my ankles." Atsushi looked around and said, There's a child's ghost here. It played a prank on you because it wanted to play." That somehow made my heart feel warm, and I put some juice and snacks there as Atsushi told me to, and proceeded to eat and drink it. He said to me happily, "Great, pretty sure the kid can cross over now." That day, I got ill. Haunted places are pretty dirty and dilapidated most of the time, so I wasn't too surprised by it. But whatever I had seemed to be quite bad because it was worse than any previous times and I was too dizzy to even stand. Atsushi came to check in on me in the afternoon. I hadn't eaten anything and was just laying in my bed. "You okay?" he asked. "Think you should eat. I'll make you something." He made me rice and egg porridge, which was delicious. I ate it all up and felt much better. I thanked him and he said, "Don't worry about it. You can call me if you ever get sick again." Then it hit me. I hadn't actually told Atsushi that I was sick and down for the count. Wanting to know how he found out I was sick, I asked him, "Hey, thanks for helping me out today, but how did you know I was sick?" "You could call it a kind of premonition, I guess. When someone close to me isn't feeling well, I kind of get a feeling," he replied. The next day, I felt much better, so I decided to go to uni. I put my shoes and went outside when I noticed something odd. I had a plate of salt in front of my entrance, something Japanese people sometimes put in or around their houses to rid the place of bad mojo. And the salt was gone. I had it out for a long time, and the salt was beginning to turn black, so maybe someone threw it away from me. I didn't really have a reason to put it there in the first place, so I didn't think much of it, and I took the plate back inside. Late in the afternoon, as I was getting ready to go home, Atsushi called out to me, "Hey, how you feeling?" "Feeling a lot better, thanks," I replied. "Glad to hear it. The place we went to yesterday had some bad energy, so you probably got hit by some of it." He reached into his bag and pulled something out. "Here, take this. It's good to have a talisman with you in times like these. I have an extra one, so you can have this one." I looked at it. It looked really weird. It was a small piece of wood painted in red. There was a vortex drawn on it, and it was swirling counterclockwise. Looking at it closer, I saw a bunch of kanji characters written on it. I couldn't read it, so I asked Atsushi what it said. "It's a Shinto ritual prayer that asks to keep evil away." "Whoa. Looks like it's gonna work. Thanks a lot, man." "No worries. You'd do the same for me." He laughed as he waved and went home. That night, when I got home, I was overcome with extreme nausea. I threw up over and over again, and in the end, I was spewing out some blood. I thought of calling Atsushi and shakily took my phone, but changed my mind when I saw the time. It was already 1 a.m. and it didn't feel right to call him at such a late hour. I called my parents instead and they said they would come to pick me up. I felt relieved and walked to the bathroom to rinse my mouth. As I was washing my face and mouth, the tap started to play up and the water eventually stopped running. Feeling unlucky about it getting clogged at a time like this, I hesitated a bit but decided to fix the problem. I unscrewed the pipes and felt the blood drain from my entire body as I loosened it and peered inside. It was filled with long black hair. I started gagging again and ran back into the toilet. I couldn't believe what I saw. I had short hair and I didn't have a girlfriend. I never even had any girls come over. So why was there so much hair in the pipes? It wasn't just a bit either. It was an unreal amount of hair. Who the hell did it belong to? I was overcome with fear and my mind was running in circles. I was praying while still in the toilet when I heard the doorbell ring. I slowly peered into the peephole and, thankfully, it was my parents. When they saw how pale I was, they took me to the emergency room straight away. Upon testing, the doctors found that I was extremely malnourished, so they had to keep me for a night and put an IV drip in me. I must have been so relieved to see my parents because my memory is a bit hazy here. The next day, my older sister came to pick me up since my parents had to work. I haven't told you yet, but my sister actually works as a kind of medium. One of the reasons I was so into the paranormal had to do with the fact that my sister was working in the field. We're really close, and it took no time to start joking around with one another. You look like hell. Not the kind of face I want to see first thing in the morning. That's not something you say to someone who's just been hospitalized. So, what did you pick up and eat from the ground this time? Oh, I didn't do any of that. I just ate some snacks at a haunted spot. My sister's face changed as soon as I said those words. What did you just say? She asked. I was caught a bit off guard by the sudden seriousness, but I decided to tell her everything that happened that day. The fact that something grabbed my ankles and I fell over. How, upon being advised by Atsushi, I had laid down some snacks and juice and then consumed them. I even told her how he came over the day after when I was sick, even though I hadn't told him anything, how the salt was gone from my entrance, and about the talisman that he had given me. And, last but not least, who could forget the long hair that clogged up my pipes? After all of that, my sister said, "You need to cut Atsushi out of your life." Huh? Was all I could say back. She didn't respond and instead said, "We're going to your place right now." We got into her car and headed towards my apartment. When we got there, she took out a white cloth and asked me to take out the talisman. As soon as she saw it, the color drained from her face and she looked away. "Why would he?" she said as she wrapped it in the white cloth and threw it in the bin. "Where's the hair?" she asked next. I took her to the bathroom where she put on a pair of white gloves, grabbed the hair and threw it and the gloves all into the bin. "Did Atsushi give you anything else? I want you to give me every single thing that has anything to do with him." I had no clue what was going on, but I knew she was serious, so I gave her everything I could think of. She threw it all in the bin. I stood there absolutely confused and she said, "Let's go home," as she grabbed the bin and started towards the door. On our way back to our parents' house, I decided to ask her what was wrong with Atsushi. "Considering you've been researching so much about ghosts and spirits, you really are kind of stupid," she said. I sat there in silence, not having a word to reply back. And I really needed to know what she meant, so I let her continue. "First of all, you ate sweets and drank juice in a place you know was haunted? Unbelievable. You think it's okay to do things like that where a bunch of spirits are? Well, Atsushi told me that the kid would be able to cross over if I did so. That's the other thing. There's no way a child's ghost has enough strength to hang onto your ankle strong enough to make you trip and fall. Not to mention, spirits don't cross over by eating and drinking with them. So, what grabbed me then? Probably a ghost of a full-grown adult. After seeing all that hair, probably a woman. The pit of my stomach shook. Why did Atsushi lie to me? And have I become possessed by the woman? Seems like you're finally starting to see who Atsushi really is. And just in case you haven't figured it out yet, he was probably also the one who got rid of the salt at your entrance. But for what? I asked. He made you eat it. You said he made you some egg and rice porridge, right? What? I don't really know what happens if someone ingests salt that's been left out to ward off bad energy, but I think he wanted to experiment on you. I felt like throwing up again. That salt had gone black, and I had eaten it. The talisman that he gave you, that sealed the deal. The vortex swirling in a counterclockwise position and the prayer written upside down. For someone who was already weakened like you were, holding something like that close to you would have made you much worse. My head was spinning. The guy I thought was a good friend was using me as some sort of guinea pig. Was he trying to kill me? I didn't know what to say, so I just looked away and closed my eyes. When I woke up, we were at my parents' house. Hey, get a hold of yourself. I'm gonna need you to be strong from now. My sister grabbed the bin and headed into the garden. She emptied the bin and started bringing a bunch of things. A thick piece of wood, sake in a bottle, something that looked like a katana, a small wooden table-looking thing, and other things I can't quite name because I don't know what they were. She got changed into what's called a shiroshozoku in Japanese. It looks like a white yukata, which, in a Buddhist tradition, is put on a person who's passed away. She then proceeded to pour a lot of water over her head. We're going to sever any ties that you have with Atsushi and this woman. We're going to return everything you got from him back to him. If your feelings wander, or you feel even an ounce of pity for them, this isn't going to work. Don't worry about that. I don't want anything to do with him anymore, and I don't want to see her spirit. I'm ready. Good. Now drink. And she thrust the bottle of sake in my face. Wait, what? All of this? All of it, until you spew. She was dead serious. I told her I was ready, so I couldn't turn back now. I grabbed the bottle and began to chug. I really tried to do my best, but it felt like I was getting nowhere. I started to feel nauseous straight away and threw up. As I was doing so, my sister put the talisman and the hair on the wooden podium. She started to burn the other things that Atsushi gave me and was chanting what sounded like a very difficult and convoluted prayer. I went for a second round of chugging the sake, and again I puked. After repeating this a few times, I started to feel lightheaded and eventually fainted. Hey, it's over. When I came to, my sister was sitting next to me. It must have been something hardcore because my sister's white robe was black with soot and her eyes were bloodshot. Am I okay now? I'm not sure. I don't know how strong Atsushi is. But you don't have to worry about the woman. Next time you ever go to another haunted place again, I'm gonna kill you before any ghost can get to you. Thank you, I said. I guess I was all right now. I was overcome with emotion, and just as I was about to express myself, she said, I forgot to mention, you owe me 150,000 yen for petrol, for the exorcism, and for your stupidity. My emotions and appreciation quickly dissipated. I started going to uni again the following day, but I never saw Atsushi again. It's not like I wanted to see someone who tried to kill me. but I had a rude awakening as to what it felt like to have zero friends. It was after this that I decided to stop chasing ghosts and the supernatural. There's no way I want to go through what I did again. So, I experienced this when I was at uni. Someone whom I considered to be my best friend was trying to kill me. The only advice I can give to you is, don't trust every word that comes out of someone's mouth, no matter how kind and caring they may seem. I'm going to apologize in advance because this is a long story. I own a small studio that specializes in creating video footage and making songs, but with the technology these days, most content creators do all that on their own and upload them easily onto social networks. So, naturally, my work has slowly been dwindling. To make up for this slump, I decided to add another branch to my business, and this is to digitize old analog information. These days, this has become my main source of income. With the internet and a bunch of streaming programs out there, some young folks have never even bought a single CD, DVD, or Blu-ray. An old man like me can't help but feel like we're being left behind by technology. But before CDs and DVDs existed, video footage and sounds were recorded on magnetic strips in the form of cassette tapes and VHS videotapes. That was how we used to view entertainment. Unlike digital formats, magnetic tapes are extremely susceptible to its environment. It can get moldy, the strips might literally break because of its physical contact with the reader, and the effects of age and time cannot be avoided. Family mementos like the video your dad filmed on your sports day, not to mention culturally and historically significant footage from the early Showa period, which began in 1926, that are left on 8mm films. I'm certain there's a tremendous number of these treasures all around Japan. My customers come to me saying they want to watch an old videotape, but it was ripped so they can't do so. Some families don't have a VHS player anymore either, so they give me their tapes, and after I fix their warped images and sounds, I digitize them and give it back to them. I make sure they can continue to relive happy past memories, even if it contains a person who has already passed away. It really makes my day to see their smiles when I return to them their treasured memories. Before I get too off topic, let me get into the main reason why I'm sharing this story with you today. When working in a field like this, sometimes you come across some very strange videos. I saw one where parents are having a fight, and the fight was filmed through a gap in the door, probably by their child. There are no shortages of amateur sex tapes either. There was one in particular, though, that horrified me the most. I'm going to describe that to you and do my best to not expose any identifying details of the individual that was filmed, nor the one who brought the video in. It all started when a man in his 70s brought in a single VHS tape. He was an individual that loved gadgets. When home computers started to become the norm, he used half of his salary to purchase one and began teaching himself programming. He had a very in-depth knowledge of video and music recording and playing mediums that even a professional like myself was taken aback. He had apparently tried everything, but he couldn't get it to play, so he finally brought it in to me. I was able to play just the first few seconds, but the footage was really warped. Apparently, it was of a woman that he was dating before he got married to another woman. He couldn't show his wife this video even though a few decades had gone by, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away either. The main thing was that he didn't remember recording anything like this, so he wanted me to fix it so he could see what it was all about. I wasn't so sure I would be able to do it, but seeing and hearing his story had also piqued my interest, so I told him I would give it a go and would only ask him to pay if I succeeded. That night, I inserted the VHS tape into the player and pressed play. I saw a woman in her 20s wearing jeans and a t-shirt with floral designs on it. She was pretty and was sitting on the edge of the bed in what seemed to be a business hotel. Her hands were resting on her knees, her back was straight, and she was looking at the camera. As she started to open her mouth, the footage started to skip and jump along with a buzzing sound. The bottom half would get all messy, then the top half. The magnetic tapes used in VHSs record signals, and these create what are called tracks, kind of like roads or a railway track. Unlike digital data, when you want to play these types of tapes, the head within the player has to run along these tracks. Otherwise, the footage might start skipping or the image might move up and down and create distortion. Video players have a self-correcting tracking button so that anyone could fix minute problems by themselves at home. But these VHS players began to get replaced by more sophisticated technology and slowly disappeared from shops. The majority of the time, even if some people still had the players at home, the magnetic strips in the tapes themselves had deteriorated, so the tracking button did nothing to correct the warped images. Since I do this for a living, I have more sophisticated machinery, use optic light approaches and digital software to almost perfectly fix them. I quickly got to work. The image in the video began to get better and the sound slowly came back. The woman sat there looking at the camera in silence. She slowly opened her mouth and started to speak. She said her name, what the weather was like, and began talking about a concert of some band that I guess was popular at the time. If it ended here, I would have thought nothing of it. But about 3 minutes in, things took an eerie turn. The woman, still sitting with her feet on the ground, raised both arms straight above her head and started to do what looked like sit-ups. I don't know if you've ever tried, but unless you're a fitness buff, your feet would lift off the floor a bit whenever you sit back up. The woman's feet, though, didn't budge. Not even a little bit. Her back was bouncing on and off the bed at incredible speed. And what made it even creepier was that she continued to talk the whole time. Her voice maintained the original tone of voice, and she wasn't getting out of breath at all. It was almost like she was doing a voiceover. This was when I noticed something. I had assumed the sound was recorded in stereo, but discovered that the left and right channels had different waveforms. As the footage got clearer, I could only hear sound coming from the left channel, and the right one was muted. When I turned on the right channel, I almost had a heart attack. There was a sudden scream that pierced through the speakers. It was so loud that it sounded like multiple people were screaming at the exact same time. I've heard many soundtracks of heavy metal bands screaming and singing in their death voices, but this scream, it started to make me feel physically sick, like I needed to throw up. Feeling dizzy, I turned off the speakers, but the sound didn't stop. Now I was starting to feel hot flashes, and I yanked the speaker cable straight out of the machine, but the sound still didn't stop. I think I blacked out a little while after that, but what I saw on the screen just before everything went black was of the woman, her hair standing on end, her eyes peeled wide open, looking at me and screaming. I think the tracking of the video was starting to go off again because her movements looked mechanical, almost like a GIF file that has been made with two images, one of her sitting and the other with her back on the bed. But all the while, her face was continuously looking at me. I don't know how long I was out cold for, but I woke up when a coworker found me and shook my shoulder. His face was a mix of worry and apprehension as he asked me what I was watching. He turned to the monitor. I looked over too, and what I saw was the same bed and the same hotel room. But the woman was gone, and all I could see on the white bedsheet was a dark red stain in the shape of someone lying down with their arms stretched above their head. The stain was dripping down over the edge of the bed onto the floor, and I could clearly see bare footprints. Was she barefoot? That was one of the first thoughts that floated into my foggy brain when I saw the scene. I explained what I saw to my co-worker, and we rewound the tape to watch it from the beginning, but it only showed the bed with the dark red stains from the start, and it eventually just cut out. These things happen, said my co-worker, and I decided not to dwell on it. I told the man that came to see me that I was unable to fix it and gave him back the VHS tape. He looked genuinely sad about it, but I felt like this should stay hidden in the dark forever, that if he saw it, it might bring back something from the past that shouldn't be. I already told myself that I would get rid of the digital copy ASAP. Anyway, thanks for reading my story until the end. If any of you have old tapes lying around, make sure you go get it fixed before it's too late to do so. This happened just a week ago. I've been into matching apps for a while, and I've met a few girls through it. We've gone out for drinks and dates, and when things go really well, we'd end up in a hotel somewhere. I met a woman through Tinder last week. Let's call her Junko. My first impression was that she was gorgeous. I felt super lucky to come across her profile, and more so when we matched. We had lots to talk about, and when we met up, it was as if we'd known each other for a long time. I was in so much bliss that somewhere during our meetup, I was slowly beginning to wonder how it would be if she became my girlfriend. We were having so much fun that I didn't realize the time go by. I had to think about how to end the night before I missed the last train home. Honestly, I wanted to just spend the night with her, but I also felt like she was different from the others and wanted to see her again, so I did what any gentleman would do and said, "Hey, you're going to miss the last train. Do you want me to walk you to the station?" She said, I feel like drinking some more. I live close by, so let's drink some more back at my place." It sounded like heaven, but I acted surprised and replied nonchalantly, "You sure? It's pretty late." "Of course I'm sure. I don't have any roommates anyway." Whoa, it was exactly what I wanted to hear. I quickly asked for the bill, paid, and we left the restaurant. We stopped by a convenience store and grabbed more booze and some finger food, hailed a taxi, and went to her apartment. I always have extra condoms in my bag, so I was all set. The apartment looked pretty chic and modern from the outside, and I was impressed by the side of it. That all changed when I entered her unit. Her room was a mess. The kind of mess where you can tell that the person has absolutely zero knowledge of how to clean up after themselves. There were mountains of shoes and umbrellas at the entrance, empty takeaway boxes and bottles everywhere in her room, and beneath all that mess, there was a bunch of clothes and bags strewn around the place. She didn't seem bothered one bit as she used her hand to push everything away and plopped our alcohol and food into the empty space she had just made. "Let's drink," she said. I didn't really know how to react, but considering I'd come this far and I was drunk, I decided to carry on. Just as before, our conversation knew no bounds and it was a lot of fun. But from time to time, I'd get a strong waft of perfume and something rotten and sour mixed in with it. Every time I smelt it, I would wonder how a gorgeous girl like her could live in such a filthy state. About an hour or two later, we were both quite drunk and the mood started to shift. Despite the mountain of trash everywhere, I couldn't fight against my libido, and we did the deed then and there. I didn't like being surrounded by all that mess, but I could let it slide because I'd never imagined I could get with a girl like her. I was still wondering whether she would want to be my girlfriend. She was the type to take control, and our sexual compatibility was also amazing. I could honestly see myself with someone like her, even though her apartment was problematic. When we finished, though, her attitude did a 180-degree turn. We'd been talking the entire time, having a great time, but she took out her phone and stopped talking to me. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," she would say. Feeling extremely awkward with how different she'd become, I asked if I could borrow her shower, and she replied that it was broken. After that, she didn't even look or talk to me anymore. Wondering what was wrong with her bath, I said, "All right, I'm just gonna go to the toilet." Seeing her nod, I headed for it. The apartment she lived in was one of those where the toilet and bath were in the same room. I opened the door and I was shocked to see that it was just as bad as the rest of the house. I barely had any room to stand to take a piss. There was trash that I couldn't identify covering every inch, and the smell in there was so strong. The bathtub itself was also filled to the brim with garbage. I knew straight away that it wasn't broken at all. She just couldn't use it because of the state it was in. While I peed, I began thinking about what to do when I noticed something from the corner of my eye. I couldn't quite pinpoint it, but I felt like there was something in the mound of trash that shouldn't be there. From the mountain of God knows what, between the bathtub and the floor, I saw what looked like a small hand poking out from the pile beneath. What the? I bent down to take a closer look. It was blackish, brownish in color and looked like it was mummified. I squinted to see more details, and I swear I saw what looked like fingernails. I let out a squeal and quickly looked away. I got out and yelled, "Hey, I remembered I have to be somewhere, so I have to go." She didn't look my way or respond. She was just playing around on her phone, and I ran the hell out of there. I knew I would never be contacting her again. From that day, I started to have nightmares. There's a bathtub filled with black, murky water, and I would hear a baby crying. The cries would slowly get louder, and I would wake up when it got unbearably loud. I don't know if I'm overthinking things, but I've been having this nightmare every day for a week now. Sorry to disappoint you, but there isn't any conclusion to this story, but it's slowly starting to affect me mentally. I mean, what I saw couldn't have been a baby, right? I got invited to a friend's wedding back in 1992. The ceremony and reception ended, and it was time for the newlyweds to leave for their honeymoon. There were 10 of us in the hotel lobby, and we decided to toss the groom up in the air a few times to give him a last hurrah. You know, like what athletes do to one another if someone shoots a goal or something. The groom was pretty hesitant about it, but the rest of us egged him on, saying it was a celebration and to let it end in style. We all gathered around him and scooped him up. Right when he was in midair during the 4th toss, I lost my balance and let my arms down for a split second to regain my balance. It must have been the worst time to do so, because apparently all 10 of us did so at the exact same time, and the groom fell straight to the ground and landed on his head. At first he was laughing and kept repeating that he was fine, but he was far from it. He couldn't move his body, and after a while he threw up. Everyone was in a panic. Obviously, the honeymoon had to be cancelled, and he was taken to the nearest hospital in an ambulance. According to the doctor, he had damaged his spine and was paralyzed from the neck down. He was told that he had to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. As for the 10 of us who were tossing him up in the air, we each got interviewed by the police to determine whether a charge of negligence could stick. But the fact was that we had all thought at the exact same time to put our hands down for one reason or another. It was a huge coincidence, and one which led to this disaster. A few days later, we went to go see the groom at the hospital. Needless to say, he was in a state of agony. He cried and yelled in anger, and we couldn't stay there too long because it hurt us to see him like that. His torment didn't end there because a month after this incident, his wife filed for divorce. Considering his vegetative state and the fact that the marriage papers weren't officially handed in yet, he had no choice but to agree with her. A while after all of this happened, we heard something unbelievable. Apparently, the groom was seeing another woman with the promise of marriage until just before he got married. The bride knew all of this and, out of fury, made a straw doll to put a hex on her soon-to-be husband. She vowed to never forgive him and wished for him to taste living hell for the rest of his life. This ritual continued for an entire week. After this, she tried to kill herself a few times, but always failed, which led to a form of PTSD and other psychological issues. She became a shell of her former self. I don't know if what happened to the groom had anything to do with the hex she supposedly put on her husband, and I'll never find out. It's been 30 years, but I will never, ever forget this incident.